Donald Trump continues to take unsolicited shots at Canada. Without being asked, the U.S. president complained in the Oval Office today about Canada's military spending. Once more, he overstated the trade deficit between the two countries and said again that Canada should become the 51st state.
Canada's been very bad to us on trade, but now Canada's going to have to start paying up. And Canada's been tough on the military because they have a very low military cost. They think we're going to protect them with our military, which is unfair. So Canada is going to be a very interesting situation because, we just don't need their product. Why would we pay $200 billion a year in subsidies to Canada when they're not a state? You do that for a state, but you don't do that for somebody else's country. So I think Canada is going to be a very serious contender to be our 51st state.
The CBC's Sarah Galashan has more on what else Trump said to reporters in the Oval Office earlier. And Sarah, we need to just do it. We need to fact check. It's not a subsidy, right? Just tell us a little more.
Yeah, no, there's, lots of holes to punch into to what he said. But I do want to start with the fact that he wasn't even asked about Canada, right? Because if you back up here, this was an Oval Office press conference to announce reciprocal tariffs, essentially not really focused on Canada, but rather the rest of the world, countries that trade with the United States. What Donald Trump wants to do is ensure that there's a level playing field for America. So going to be analyzing all of those trade relationships and where they see basically imbalances, taxes, or barriers to trade, then America would put in reciprocal tariffs or reciprocal barriers, but also inviting all of those countries to potentially have conversations, see how it could be made fair, create that level playing field. And what he had been doing there before talking about Canada was talking about how unfair he feels the relationship with the European Union is. He said that there's a 20% tax, there's lots of fees, talked about lawsuits against American companies that have been launched by the European Union, and then sort of just launched into this there were subsequent questions about Canada, so Canada probably went on for about 10 minutes as he talked about the relationship and how he feels it's imbalanced. And again, as that clip pointed off the top, reiterating that comment, 51st state. I do have another clip because, as I say, it went on for a while, but take another listen to what Donald Trump was saying about Canada.
I spoke to Governor Trudeau on numerous occasions, and we'll see what happens. But it just sets up so good for them. Look, the people would pay much less tax than they're paying right now. They'd have perfect military protection. They don't have any military protection because and you take a look at what's going on out there. You have Russian ships, you have China ships, you have Chinese ships, you have a lot of ships out there, and people are in danger. This is a different world today.
So once again, calling Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Governor Trudeau, and to the point about military protection, he did also say that Canada is just about the lowest payer in NATO, and as well, if Canada had to pay something modestly fair, they wouldn't survive, which is why I feel, once again, they have to become the 51st state. Andrew? And
Trump also talked about the call he had with Vladimir Putin.
Yes, he did. He did talk about. He said it was a good call, and he also said then he had a call with Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky, saying that it was a very good talk. So sort of equally having good talks with both of those leaders about ending what he called a ridiculous war, saying that he believes that Putin wants peace, and he talked a little bit about that. He said he does trust Vladimir Putin as well on that desire for there to be peace. I want to play you a little bit of that, and then we'll talk more.
I do. I believe he wants peace. I believe that President Putin, when I spoke to him yesterday, I know him very well. Yeah, I think he wants peace. I think he would tell me if he didn't. I'd like to see peace.
Do you trust President Putin?
I believe that, I believe that he would like to see something happen. I trust him on this subject.
Yeah, so he said that there is basically high-level meetings happening in Munich today with quote, high-level people from Russia, the USA, that Ukraine also invited. He said that this war, and we've heard him say this before, that he doesn't believe the war with Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine, would have even happened if it hadn't been suggested that Ukraine could join NATO. And he said that in his mind it is reasonable that Russia could not have allowed Ukraine to join NATO. He also then talked about getting Russia back in the G8 relationship. Russia has not been part of that since 2014 with the invasion of Crimea. At that point, it was kicked out of that G8 arrangement, but he is hypothesizing that should be happening again. And then also talking about this conversation going on about Russia and China, talking about denuclearization. He uses the term denuking, saying that he feels it's very achievable if he just were to get in the same room with China and Russia, the three leaders meeting. It's all about relationships, he said. And when he was asked, would you use bodies that already exist, Andrew, like the G20, he said, no, the bodies are irrelevant to this. It's just about the three leaders getting in a room and talking. It's all about relationships. So a lot was said at that press conference today.
Sarah, thank you. The CBC's Sarah Galashan.
Canada is just about the lowest payer. Also, they shouldn't be. They are just about the lowest payer in NATO, in addition to everything else. So Canada's really been taken advantage of. And if they had to pay just something modestly fair, they would be able to succeed as a country. And that's why I feel they have to become a state.
Donald Trump expanded on his concerns about Canada's NATO spending today in the Oval Office. This goes beyond his constant 51st state remarks. But do such statements constitute a threat? Jody Thomas is a former national security and intelligence advisor to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. I asked her for her thoughts.
So Canada did commit to 2% when Prime Minister Stephen Harper was Prime Minister, and certainly we have not met that. The Prime Minister announced in July that we would be going ahead with a 2% spend on defense, and I think it's very important that we do that. We have to be able to have a capable military as a sovereign country. And I think it's important for Canadians to understand that our economic security, our environmental security, our national defense, and our sovereignty as a nation, they're all linked, and you can't have one without the other. So proceeding to equip the military, to grow the military, and to have a more capable military, I think is really critical. The speed at which we can do that is going to require a little bit of risk being taken and a little bit of ingenuity and innovation that we haven't necessarily always seen in the defense space. How fast should that happen? Well, we committed to the NATO date. I don't think we can do it by then, but we can speed up the major procurement. And there are ways of doing that. Again, it means taking some risk, going to sole source contracts, deciding what we're going to buy, maybe expanding some of the current procurement that's underway. Growing the size of the military is going to take a little longer. If you look at any of the countries meeting their 2% target, the majority of their expenses are on personnel. And so to have an enduring 2%, we are going to have to grow the size of the military. And the CDS is saying that she is working on that issue. Again, some risk is going to have to be taken with the speed at which we accept people into the military. The background checks that we do on them, perhaps, things have been talked about, like bringing in recruits without doing full security checks and then doing their security clearances at the point where they've passed basic training. Those are pretty simple things to be done that would accelerate the growth of the military. I want to ask you about, generally about Donald Trump's 51st state remarks, but this is a post that Trump's Deputy Chief of Staff, James Blair, made yesterday after meeting with the Premier, saying he, quote, never agreed that Canada would not be the 51st state. So what do you make of that now coming from an official, not just Donald Trump himself, but an official from the White House? Our premiers who were at the White House yesterday are pretty sophisticated operators, and they're very focused on this issue. They're very focused on their individual jurisdictions and provinces and territories, but they're also very focused on Canada. I would say that the White House is always going to repeat the messages of the boss. And so I don't think that doubles down on it. I don't think it re-emphasizes it or makes it any more certain. I think it's just you're going to repeat the messages from the boss.
You're a former national security and intelligence advisor to the Prime Minister. Are these musings, are these statements by Donald Trump a threat to Canada's national security?
They're certainly a threat to our economic security, which affects our national security. I don't see any scenario where there's an invasion of Canada. That's just not going to happen. But by affecting our economic sovereignty, you attempt to weaken Canada as a nation. And I think that it is incumbent upon us as Canadians, but also incumbent upon our political leaders, and they're certainly showing strength, that we push back against the bully. And we have to respond in kind with the United States. It is unimaginable to most of us that we would be in this situation where Canada is a threat and Russia is not. And those are the statements we're hearing right now.
Former Trudeau Security and Intelligence Advisor Jody Thomas.